طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So we discussed the traffic policing, and we said that traffic policing mechanisms, they are used to regulate the traffic and to make sure that the traffic parameters, they abide by the the requirements from the network side. So instead of allowing the application to send with whatever traffic parameters, including the rate and everything, which might affect the users that are sharing the network resources and have them starving for a long time. So traffic policing is used to regulate the traffic either from the source level or from the router level. And one example we have discussed is what we call leaky bucket. And for leaky bucket, we said that this traffic policing mechanism tries to constrain the output to the network to a specific rate. If this rate is below, if the traffic rate is below this maximum rate, then the traffic will pass smoothly. Otherwise, the leaky bucket will constrain the traffic rate to the maximum rate, which is, as we said, small r. And we said that the slight problem with that is that multimedia applications are inherently variable and dynamic. And we said that this constant rate may actually lead to a variable quality, right? So leaky bucket is not, from that perspective, it's not the most efficient traffic policing mechanism. So today we will try to discuss another traffic policing mechanism which takes into consideration the bursty nature of the multimedia traffic. And the way that this works is that first it tries to make some isolation between the actual traffic and the bucket. So it tries to separate between the two. And what happens is that there is a specific rate of credits that you get, which is represented by these tokens. Okay? So there is a rate of these tokens that you get every, let's say like every 10 milliseconds or something, you get one token, which means that if you have this token, you can send one packet. Okay? And the rate of filling these tokens into the bucket is fixed. Okay? So it's simple. So someone might ask, what is the modification here? It's instead of constraining the rate of the traffic, we're constraining the rate of the tokens. So let's see the effect of this and how this will change the game. So if the incoming traffic has a capital R, which is less than small r, where small r here is the rate of filling the tokens. What used to happen in the leaky bucket is that this rate will follow through, which means that the output rate will be capital R, okay, which is less than small r, right? So nothing is different here. However, one thing we should notice is that the rate of filling the tokens is still small r, which is more than capital R. This means what? This means that you will get credit, okay, filling up the bucket for you. Okay, it's because the rate of filling the token is more than the rate that the traffic is using to send. Okay, so you will have some tokens going into the bucket with the difference between small r and capital R. Right? These tokens represent like credit for you. It's like I'm giving you a maximum rate of small r. You're using less. Why should I penalize you and say, okay, you're using less, it's your fault, and that's it? So what token bucket tries to do to make up for the problem of the leaky bucket is by saying, okay, if the rate is small, I'm going to give you some credit with the difference. So that when you try to send later on, and you do not have, and the rate is big, or larger or greater than small r, the only way for you to send is to get from your own credit that you have accumulated throughout the time. Okay, we'll see that in the next case. So in the first case, if capital R is small than is less than small r, you will still go smooth, and the rate will be capital R, and it will go to the output port. That's normal. However, the only difference here is that you will get more credit, because the rate of filling the tokens is small r, which is greater than capital R. So the rate of filling the tokens here, so that the bucket will be filled with a rate which is small r minus capital R. Okay? This is the main difference. Like, let's say, let's just use some numbers. Here, I'm telling you that, well, the traffic rate, let's say the traffic rate is 1 kilobits per second. Okay, which is capital R. And the small r is actually, let's say, 3 kilobits per second. Okay? Which means that every 1 over 3 to the power 5 of the second, you get 1 token. So you get 1 token with a rate which is 300 kilobits per second. Okay? So now, what is the output rate? What is the outgoing rate?
100.
Is 100. Okay, so that's, yeah, we agree on that. So the question now is that if I'm trying to fill this with a rate which is 300 kilobits per second, which means that like every 300 seconds, so every second I'm putting 300 kilobits in that bucket. Okay? But 100 kilobits out of the 300 will get used. So I will stay with 200 bits per second. 200 kilobits per second in the bucket. So every 1 second, I get 200 kilobits in the bucket. For every second, I keep this rate constant. Okay? So the difference here is that the token buckets will start piling up some tokens for me. Okay?
So let's save it for the next time?
Yes, exactly. So this is the whole purpose, is that I'm saving this credit so that I can use it later in case late, because as we said, this traffic, the incoming traffic, is actually going up and down. Okay? So what leaky bucket tries to do is to change this traffic. If we assume that small r is something like this, then what happens in the leaky bucket is that we change the output rate to something like this. Like this part, and then constant. And then this part will be as is, and then constant. And then this part, and so on. Okay? So, in a way, I'm getting penalized, right? Because I'm trying to send some burst here, but I'm not able to, because leaky bucket is not allowing me to send this high rate, right? So in a way, I'm being penalized. Okay? The difference here with token bucket is that while I'm sending with a rate which is less than small r, this part, okay, will accumulate some tokens for me. So when I get Here, I can use from my credit. This is the main difference now. So, in other words, a traffic like this may follow through pretty nicely, no problem, in the case of token bucket. Versus in the case of leaky bucket, there will be a cap, and I will be sort of penalized, even though in most of the time, 90% of the time, I'm sending below the maximum rate. So you're not tolerating even the 10% of the time which I'm going above the rate. Go ahead.
Doctor, can you kindly re-explain the token bucket, how it's better than the leaky bucket?
Yeah, the way it's better is that, as we said, multimedia applications are inherently dynamic and variable in terms of rate requirements. And as we said, for compressed video, and this was one of the questions, so for compressed video, it inherently requires a variable bitrate, right? So in a way, the application by default sends variable bitrate. So if we were to use leaky bucket, this multimedia application will sort of get penalized, because if it tries to send below the small r in this area, I'm fine with that, no problem. If you try to go above, then I will not allow you. That's it. It's very strict, very harsh, and in a way, I'm being penalized. So what is the effect of this? As we said, for compressed video requires inherently variable bitrate. Variable bitrate gives you constant quality. So if we make constant bitrate, then you get variable quality. But of course, this effect will get compensated for by using what? The jitter buffer. Okay? So small effect like this. So if I use leaky bucket and at the receiver side I use some kind of de-jitter buffer, I will be able to get across this problem. But if we look locally inside the traffic policing, in a way leaky bucket implicitly penalizes the multimedia traffic if it ever goes above the limit, okay, and it just cuts it through very harshly, without any tolerance, okay.
If it's above the R, so it will drop, right?
Sorry?
If it's above the R.
Which one you're talking about? The leaky bucket or the token bucket? The leaky bucket, yes. If it's above a small r, then that's it. I will send with a small r, okay. And if the bucket fills up, I'll drop.
So there is a delay.
Yes, this will be transformed into a delay, right? If you are lucky, because if the bucket fills up, then it will be a delay and a packet drop.
So in this case, we can use de-jitter.
Yes, you can use de-jitter buffer on the receiver side to compensate for this small effect. Okay, but the good thing about token bucket is that you don't have to do that, because in this area, what you will essentially do is that you can use from your credit, which has piled up when you were trying to send with a rate below small r. What happened? Clear? Okay. So if you are in violation, although this is not actually a violation, but if you are in violation like 10% of the time, I can tolerate you. And this is what appears here in this case. So in this case, what happens is that R is slightly greater than small r. Capital R is slightly greater than small r. But in that case, we still have some tokens in the bucket. Okay? If that's the case, what is the outgoing traffic? Capital R. And that's the main difference between token bucket and leaky bucket. Because capital R may follow through by using some credit, which means I'm tolerating some bursts. So the application is trying to send with a rate above the limit, but that limit can be tolerated if and only if I have some tokens in the bucket. And the outgoing traffic here will use at a rate of capital R, which is above small r. مفهوم؟ Okay.
Is it efficient in terms of bandwidth?
Efficient, it depends. It depends. That's a good question. Just the fact that I'm allowing a burst, it doesn't mean that the network will be able to deal with that burst. Right? Yeah, but at least from the local view, I'm actually allowing more bursts to get into the network. And if I'm lucky, this burst will follow through the network and it will arrive on the other side, which means that hopefully, I will get a constant quality at the receiver. But that depends on so many other factors. Depends on what? Depends on the traffic policing at the other routers, and it depends on the packet scheduling at the other routers, and it depends on the channel mechanisms at the other hubs, whether it's wireless or wired. But at least from my local perspective as a source or as a local router, I will allow some burst to get into the network.
Doctor, in this case, we are not policing this traffic because we are allowing whatever the...
No,
the
you are
increment
policing indirectly, because that's what will appear in this this is case B, right, where we have more rate than the limit, but we have tokens. But here, in this case, you have R, which is greater than small r, but you don't have tokens. Okay? In that case, you'll have to wait. The traffic has to wait. So we are policing, but we're like sort of loose policing, which gives better quality typically for multimedia applications, because as we said, typically we send compressed video or compressed audio, which requires inherently variable bitrate. So by doing this, we are tolerating variable bitrate, but to some extent. We're not leaving it uncontrolled. Because this case C, if you try to be smart and send with a capital R, which is much greater than small r, then you will get to this. You'll get to this case where the capital R is much greater, and it actually empties all the tokens, and then we end up with no tokens. In that case, you have to wait. So you have consumed the regular tokens, and you have consumed all your credit that you had accumulated before, so now you have to wait. So that's policing, but it tolerates some bursts, okay? Which is important actually for multimedia applications, to be tolerable to some bursts. مفهوم? Any questions? So assignment 2, you will get to implement leaky bucket and token bucket. You'll be programming it. It's very simple. So this will help you really understand it even more. Any questions? So you have some tolerance to the bursts of the multimedia applications. Okay? طيب خلاص كده نستقبل إن شاء الله.